Beneath the heavy cloak of the setting sun, the world rested in a palette of fading light and lengthening shadows. The quaint town of Longmont, Colorado, wore its twilight attire, a medley of peaceful resignation to the night and anticipation of a brand new day. Amid the dulcet hush, a lone figure shuffled down the dimly lit main street, his silhouette intermittently cloaked by the yawning darkness. Elijah Crane, a private investigator by trade and a guardian of the lost in spirit, moved with an air of quiet sincerity. His eyes, sharp yet pained, bore the weight of a haunted past. Anxiety had made a home in the crevices of his heart, its tendrils reaching out and clutching the reins of his life. In his solitude, though, there was strength, a resilience fostered by regret and loss. As he moved closer to the outskirts of town, Crane found himself standing before the ominous figure of an abandoned warehouse. This derelict structure, partially swallowed by the gathering dusk, was his latest enigma, the center of a web of unsolved disappearances. "You're one ugly son of a gun, aren't you?" he mumbled, his voice barely a whisper against the cold Colorado breeze. His fingers toyed with a dog-eared photograph of a young woman, a recent entrant to Longmont's growing list of disappearances. He turned as the sound of crunching gravel announced a visitor. "Elijah," greeted Sheriff Lewis, his weathered features etched with concern. "I've been looking for you." "And here I am," Crane replied. His eyes never left the warehouse, but his fingers ceased their nervous dance around the photograph. The sheriff sighed heavily, his gaze also pulled towards the warehouse. "Elijah, are you sure you're up for this? This case? It's different." Crane nodded, his gaze softened as he looked at the photograph in his hand. "I need to find her, Lewis. I can't let another one be lost." "You're a good man, Crane." "Too good for this damn place," Lewis muttered, patting Crane's shoulder before walking away, leaving him alone with the echo of his words and the chilling silence of the warehouse. In the quiet solitude of twilight, Crane was once again the lighthouse in the storm, his steadfast resolve a stark contrast to his humble demeanor. He was pulled towards the labyrinthine mystery, his trauma fueling his mission. Yet as the last vestiges of daylight died around him, Crane felt an unsettling shiver. It wasn't just the chilling wind or the mournful lament of the abandoned warehouse. It was a stirring within him, a foreshadowing of darkness. But as his shadow stretched long and weary beneath the pale moonlight, he was ready to step into the unknown. Morning broke over Longmont, shattering the sanctuary of the previous night's shadows with its relentless light. Crane had spent the entire night wrestling with dreams, ones punctuated by shadowy figures and the haunting echo of the warehouse's silence. Now, as the daylight intruded into his modest living quarters, he found himself drawn to an unmarked envelope lying on his doorstep. He picked up the envelope gingerly, his fingers brushing against the rough texture of the paper. His heart pounded in his chest as he unfolded the letter, revealing the cryptic contents within. A series of archaic symbols, like skeletal fingers reaching out from the parchment, sent a chill up his spine. Interspersed were fragments of the local folklore, stories he had dismissed as fables, and half-remembered dreams of the town's older inhabitants. Whispers of the ancients, the bartender at Pete's Pub, Old Grady, had called them. A collection of tales revolving around eldritch entities that lurked in the unseen corners of reality. Now those whispers seemed to come alive in the cryptic letter in his hands. A knock on his door jolted him from his thoughts. It was Sheriff Lewis, his furrowed brows suggesting a sleepless night similar to his own. "Elijah," Lewis began, his voice holding a hint of hesitation, "I heard you've been digging around asking questions." Crane nodded, gesturing towards the cryptic letter on his desk. "And getting answers I never anticipated, Lewis." The sheriff glanced at the symbols, a chill creeping into his eyes. "These stories, they're old, older than any of us here. I used to think they were just scare tales for kids." "And now?" Crane probed, his gaze steady on Lewis. "Now," Lewis sighed, "I'm not so sure. Be careful, Elijah." Left alone once again, Crane stared at the cryptic symbols, feeling the weight of unspoken dread pressing against him. The warehouse, now tied to these arcane whispers, beckoned him like a dark star pulling him into its orbit. His intuition as a private investigator, mingled with the raw, empathic nature of his soul, urged him forward. If these whispered secrets held the key to the missing people of Longmont, then he would have to brave the shadows and face whatever lurked within. As the sun began its descent, painting Longmont in hues of twilight once again, he found himself standing before the warehouse, its darkness more profound, more menacing. The whispers of the shadows seemed louder, and he felt the edges of his reality beginning to fray. Unseen threads were weaving an insidious plot, their chilling hum hinting at a cosmic horror that lay in wait, and Crane, against all odds, was determined to confront it. Underneath the vast umbrella of the Colorado night sky, the full moon hung heavy, casting an ethereal glow over the landscape. Longmont, with its houses nestled close and its streets eerily quiet, felt suspended in time. At the heart of this moon-kissed town, an old warehouse brooded, its foreboding aura twisting the lunar brilliance into a sinister pallor. Elijah Crane, with each passing day more enigmatic detective than man, felt the peculiar tug of the moonlight. Sleep eluded him, replaced by the insistent whispers of a hidden world. His quiet apartment was no longer a sanctuary, but rather a launching point into the abyss of the unknown. Stepping outside, he found himself drawn towards the warehouse, the magnetic pull now undeniable. His footsteps echoed in the still night, a solitary percussion in the orchestra of silence. The chilling symbols of the cryptic letter were etched into his memory, their silent promise of revelations compelling him. The warehouse, under the influence of the moonlight, appeared different, its usual foreboding demeanor transformed into a surreal beauty. He steeled himself, feeling the icy grip of anxiety inching up his spine, but his determination held stronger. Crane approached the warehouse, his heart pounding the rhythm of a somber dirge. Inside, he found a hidden passage, one that led him into a concealed basement bathed in an unnatural, sickly green luminescence. What he saw next could only be described as a grotesque tableau straight from a fever dream. A group of shadowy figures partaking in an unholy ritual, the air thick with the scent of terror and the cruel harmony of chants in a forgotten tongue. His eyes widened as he caught sight of a familiar set of symbols inscribed within the circle of the ritual. His name, somehow intertwined with the alien letters, emerged from the unsettling pandemonium. A stark revelation hit him like a punch to the gut. He wasn't the hunter in this cosmic game, but the hunted. "You have finally arrived, Elijah Crane," echoed a disembodied voice, pulling him back from his thoughts. The ritual, the traffickers, the warehouse, everything had been a setup, a trap designed to draw him into their web. His world spun, but he clung to his wits. He'd become a piece in a cosmic game that threatened not just his sanity, but the very fabric of reality. As he stumbled out of the warehouse, the night seemed darker, the shadows more menacing. A terrifying journey lay ahead, one that promised a descent into the maws of the unfathomable. The next move was his, and time was a luxury he no longer had. In the world outside his small Colorado town, the sun rose and set, oblivious to the cosmic terror that had ensnared Elijah Crane. Time felt distorted, a malleable entity under the influence of forces far beyond his understanding. His modest apartment was now a bastion against the alien dread that had come to claim him. Each day, his investigation into the slave traders receded further into the shadows, replaced by a struggle to keep his sanity amidst an onslaught of otherworldly phenomena. Shadows grew longer and whispered darker tales. The walls of his home seemed to breathe. The mirror reflected a world just out of sync with his own. It felt like being trapped in a chillingly familiar nightmare, yet he was acutely aware of its reality. His anxiety, once a silent tormentor, had evolved into a constant companion in this new, horrifying existence. He could see it in the mirror, hear it in the whispers, feel it in the cold dread that clung to him like a second skin. One evening, Sheriff Lewis paid him a visit, his face etched with worry. "Elijah," he started, his voice trembling. "You've been holed up in here for days. The town's talking." Crane managed a grim smile. "If only they knew what I was up against, Lewis." "You're fighting shadows, Crane," Lewis replied. "Shadows that might not even exist." "But they do exist, Lewis," Crane retorted, his gaze drifting to the unmarked letter on his table. "And they want something from me, something I cannot give." Lewis sighed, patting Crane's shoulder before leaving him alone once more. The silent farewell of a friend who didn't understand but wished he could. Crane was alone again in his fight against the cosmic abyss, a mere mortal at the heart of a cosmic whirlpool, being sucked into an unholy descent. The only way out was through, he realized. He would have to confront the cosmic horror and hope he emerged at the other side. He was no longer just a detective. He was a man who had peered into the abyss and was determined to fight it. Longmont awoke to an uncharacteristically gloomy dawn, a pall of unease enveloping the town like a shroud. It was as if the fabric of reality itself had grown taut, expecting an impending rending. At the center of it all, Elijah Crane prepared himself for the final confrontation. His home no longer offered the sanctuary it once did. The walls seemed closer, the air thicker, and the shadows pulsed with a life of their own, their inky bodies rippling like serpents in the dim light. Each shadow whispered of impending doom, their voices a cacophonous symphony in the otherwise silent morning. Crane sat at his desk, his fingers tracing the archaic symbols on the cryptic letter that started it all. "I'm not what you want," he muttered to the empty room, the weight of his fate pressing down on him. The morning wore on, bringing with it a shift in the air. A peculiar energy pulsed through the town, its origin emanating from the warehouse. The moment had arrived. He left his apartment for what he knew might be the last time, his steps echoing in the desolate streets. As he approached the warehouse, it was as if reality was folding in on itself, the air warping and shimmering like heat over an asphalt road. He could hear them again, the chants in the forgotten language, their discordant melody tearing at his sanity. He stepped into the warehouse, the familiar sickly green luminescence bathing the room. The shadowy figures stood in the center of their unholy circle, his name echoing around him. He could feel their eyes on him, their expectation a tangible force in the air. But he was resolute. He had come prepared for this face-off, armed with an unyielding will to protect his reality, his town. With every fiber of his being, he resisted their call, their attempt to pull him into the cosmic abyss. And then, in a moment of intense clarity, he felt a shift, a change within him. He was no longer just the hunted, the prey of cosmic entities. He was Elijah Crane, a man who had been through the abyss and came out stronger. The anxiety that once crippled him was now his anchor, grounding him amidst the cosmic storm. "Enough!" he bellowed, his voice ricocheting off the walls. The figures recoiled, the chants faltered. He held his ground, his stance defiant. The cosmic entities, surprised by his resilience, faltered. In that moment, he felt a surge of energy, a desperate push against the nightmarish reality. With a final defiant cry, he managed to tear himself away from the entities, ripping his name from their cosmic script. Reality snapped back, the warehouse returning to its usual ominous self. The shadowy figures vanished, their chants fading into nothingness. He stumbled out of the warehouse, gasping for air. He had done it. He had escaped from the inescapable. He had confronted the cosmic horror and lived to tell the tale. His escape, however, came at a cost. As the sun set over Longmont, he felt a change within him. He was different now, reshaped by the ordeal. He had faced his worst fears and emerged victorious, forever changed in a way only cosmic horror could achieve. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like it and subscribe to our channel, where you can find more similar stories, and click on the bell icon to never miss one. There is plenty more cosmic horror to come from the Eldritch Tales Factory. Stay tuned, and until next time.